This is just a tremendous day. A huge win for the Constitution, for folks who cover tax policy, for anybody who remembers the Revolutionary War. We fought against specifically a taxation power that Congress did not have any say over. So this is, in my opinion, the largest and most impactful macroeconomic ruling the courts have ever delivered. So just a tremendous day. It is in line with what the market was expecting. You can see that investors were very prepared to rip the retail stocks, everybody who's been exposed to the 40% trans-shipping tariffs, the ad hoc 50% tariffs on Brazil, the wide-ranging threats of 200% tariffs on French wine that have just been spewing out of the White House for 12 months now. So it's really an exhilarating day, an incredible day for the Constitution, in my opinion.
Henrietta, is this, do you think, embolden any of President Trump's adversaries, whether in Congress or just within Washington, D.C. apparatus, that maybe this gives them a little bit more confidence to push back? Is there any reason to believe that?
Absolutely. I think there's two ways to look at this. First of all, this is exceptional news for President Trump. Americans hate the tariffs. They know their taxes, they know that they're driving inflation, and they don't like them. So now that that authority has been stripped away from him, the president no longer has to collect these taxes. It's up to him to decide whether he wants to migrate into new and different authorities, like Section 122, that give him the ability to impose tariffs at a 15% rate for the next 5 months. If he wants to do that, he can go ahead on. But the American public will be very grateful that the Supreme Court struck these tariffs down, and even more grateful if he keeps them off. So that's one way of looking at it. And Republicans on Capitol Hill are staring down the barrel of a very ugly affordability narrative election cycle, where we've seen races as diverse as Texas swing 31 points away from President Trump just since he was elected. Those are tremendous losses for the Republican conference, and most of it is driven by the president's handling of the U.S. economy. It's influenced not just the traditional independent voter that we are always concerned with, but also with young male and Hispanic voters who have driven the president to his second term. So a lot to see here.
A lot to see here, and it's not just American stocks that are benefiting. I'm looking at, for instance, LVMH, Hennessy in Europe climbing on the news, up 4.4% in European trading. Yep. So companies that rely on exports to the U.S. also benefiting from this ruling. Paul asks a really important question, Henrietta.
Basic.
It's very basic. Are tariffs rolled back starting today?
They are illegal. So at Border Patrol, one of the things that's questionable here is that the White House has said all these trade deals are still going to be intact. You know, we've signed these agreements. That is null and void. Now, if you are an importer and you are at Customs and Border Patrol, you no longer will suffer paying for these tariffs. The Supreme Court has told Customs and Border Patrol they can no longer collect them. So this is a problem that the White House is going to have to address. They have a number of trade deals that they have signed. I believe there's about 8 at this point, and many of them include a reciprocal tariff of 10% in the case of the UK or 19% in the case of Indonesia. Those tariffs are illegal. The Supreme Court has told the Customs and Border Patrol people this authority is not permitted. So it's the importers who are going to rise up and say, I'm not paying. It doesn't matter what the countries, independently decide or whatever the White House says.
So what do we expect this administration, how do you expect the president and the administration to respond here? Do you think they will aggressively try to work other tariff routes, or maybe just let this issue die and just fade away?
I appreciate the question, Paul. I am wildly out of consensus on this, but what I just described on Section 122 is just one of the many alternatives that the president has. Section 301, which is $350 billion worth of tariffs on China. We could re-up that and apply it to the EU, the UK, or Brazil. All of those have been threatened. But think about what functionally that means. It means that individual businesses will have to go out again, get their trade lawyers on the payroll to comply with brand new, potentially even unused authorities that they'll have to comply with once again. Is it a 15% tariff rate under Section 122? Does it exist now? When's the president going to put it on? What do I need to worry about with the national security tariff? The confusion and the uncertainty, which were the buzzwords following Liberation Day in April, are going to come roaring back in the event the president decides to migrate away from IEEPA and move into new and different authorities. I think it would be extraordinarily disruptive. And again, with my eye on the election cycle and the affordability narrative, the president, I think, is already on a very tight leash, and he's not going to have the leeway to fully reimpose anywhere near the revenue that has been collected by IEEPA so far. So I don't think these tariffs will ever come back at their current level. And I think they will be much more restrained going forward.